Rukus Avenue Radio.
Hello, this is Shenali, and you're listening to Rukus Avenue Radio.
Namaste and hello, Rukus Avenue radio listeners. This is your correspondent, Priyadarshini G. Roy. We are live today at the Dash Radio Studio on Hollywood Boulevard with a very special guest who is a women's advocate and creator of Power of Women, Shenali Rajaratnam. Shenali, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Priyadarshini. Good to be here.
We're so excited to have you, and without any further ado, I'd like to give a glimpse of your amazing achievement to our guests so they know more about all that you have done. So Shenali Rajaratnam is an extraordinary leader, social entrepreneur, and the visionary founder of Power of Women and co-founder of We Are the Hope nonprofit. With a profound dedication to elevating women and fostering the development of self, society, and the environment, she embodies the kind of female leadership the world needs today. With an impressive background in music, media, entertainment, and technology development, Shenali has continuously pushed boundaries and pioneered innovative initiatives. From spearheading a conscious marketplace of the future to championing the concept of edutainment, she is driven by a commitment to broadening the narrative and bringing balance to humanity. Shenali's approach is solution-driven, centered on collaboration, peace, well-being, and above all, love. Her exceptional work is a testament to her unwavering passion for creating positive change and inspiring collective empowerment. Shenali, thank you so much for all that you do and all that you give back. How do you feel today?
Oh, thank you, Priyadarshini. Thank you for sharing that. I feel amazing to be with another amazing woman who's doing this.
Thank you so much. Today is about you and how women can collaborate together, advocate for one another, and create positive change by empowerment. So tell us about your journey and how this all transpired for you.
Oh, thank you, Priyadarshini. I think my life has always been so interesting in terms of I didn't really understand the social norms.
Okay.
Of how women are supposed to be, how men are supposed to be. Growing up, I was a tomboy.
Okay, me too. It's all good. You see a dress now. It wasn't like that before.
I know what you mean. So I had to go through the process, but I had some amazing individuals around me. My brother, my father, my mother, my best friend, all the people around me who were so supportive. So it just really made sense for me to do what I'm doing because of the support I have had in my life leading up to. So
that's good. So, okay, growing up, what were your aspirations like? You sound like you have an amazing foundation with your family who were very supportive. What were your interests and hobbies, and were you always interested in politics or women empowerment, or how did that cultivate for you?
Interesting question. Growing up, I didn't really have a lot of female figures that I could look up to and be like, I want to be like her. That was a lie. Our leadership had integrity. That kind of a leadership where you look and you're like, that person's got my back. They really stand up for something and they're going for it. So I never really got to see that growing up. So I always was in search of it. And I realized if it's not out there, I suppose I have to be that for my own self.
Absolutely.
So that's how the journey started. Just questioning and trying to find what's out there. So I was a kid growing up, and here we are.
Here we are. So now before getting to here we are in the heart of Los Angeles and Hollywood, you said that you grew up in Sri Lanka, right? So what was that upbringing like? How has that cultural influence shaped your views today?
So I grew up a little less than half of my life in Sri Lanka. I have been in the US way more than half of my life at this point. Growing up, you would know this, especially wearing brown.
Yeah.
There's a lotion called Fair and Lovely. I don't know if you're aware
Everybody
of it.
is aware of the fair and not so lovely.
So growing up, I have darker skin compared to the rest. And I mean, this is what I grew up with. Dark skin is considered ugly.
It's beautiful.
That's what it is. I mean, growing up in Sri Lanka, my dad always said, you can do anything. So that's why I said I was a tomboy. I didn't see how I was a girl. I have to be quiet, just smile. My dad was like, you can do anything. But then at the same time, the society I grew up in is like girls have to be a certain way. They have to be fair, to be lovely. So that was an interesting experience growing up in Sri Lanka, and then coming to LA to realize people stopping you on the street to say, "I love your tan."
I know. Yeah. It's a culture shock.
It is a culture shock. I went through it, and I think that was a beautiful experience that gave me the two sides of the same coin. How the perception is what defines how you really interact with others, what you experience. It's your perception. So that was very interesting.
That's really a key point that you mentioned, that I think a lot of countries that were colonized in the past, not just India, Sri Lanka, or any other South Asian country, but you see that predominantly in any country that was formally colonized and meant to believe that they held the power and they held all of the righteousness, and so we had to acclaim to be at their stature. And now that's dwindling when you move to the West and you see that the West is going back to our heritage and our root, like essentially our roots, whether that comes from Sanskrit, or that comes from yoga, that comes from the nutrition and Ayurveda and all these things that we hold very near and dear to us in the South Asian subcontinent and, what was formerly known as the Indian subcontinent. How do you feel that has transpired in the West? Was that initially a culture shock, or was that just something that you started learning, that whatever you were taught to be seemed as less than or wasn't considered good or beautiful now is just upheld on a pedestal here in the West?
That's a very interesting point that you brought up, because growing up, especially in LA, you know this. I mean, you see yoga studios every step of the way, and you hear about people talking about meditation, not just yoga, but doing the yoga as a form of a lifestyle. The food we eat, going vegetarian, people listening to more gurus from India. So this is all happening, and I really do believe this was not something that started now. This started about 100 years ago when some of these Paramahansa, these gurus came to America. Even Nikola Tesla actually studied from the yogis. Mm-hmm. To all, Edison, to everybody, they all studied from the yogis. They read Steve Jobs, his book, Autobiography of a Yogi. Mm-hmm. So this has been coming, and there's a lot of inspiration, a lot of knowledge that comes from the Sanskrit. And there's something called Sanatana Dharma. That is the objective truth. The objective truth always comes to be, and I think that's what India has been holding for so long. It belongs to all of us, all of humanity. It's coming. It has to start somewhere, and that's where it's held, and it's coming out.
I feel like when you speak about Sanatana Dharma, or just the spiritual way of life and all the contributions that India has given to the world, culturally speaking, whether that is not just the superficial of tasty food, but the nutrition and the farming and the agriculture behind sustainability and giving back to nature and society is so crucial and important. And we'll touch on that in a little bit when we talk about the broader scope of things. But I want to come back to your journey. So when you grew up here, what was your education like? What were your artistic endeavors like? And ultimately, what led you to create Power of Women?
Good question, Priyadarshini. Growing up here, like you said, I had a culture shock. So when I started high school here, I went to a private girls' school, a Christian girls' school in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So coming to LA and going to a co-ed school, a high school where you see boys and girls in colored. Yeah. No
without
uniforms. So I was in a culture shock for about a good 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I was so lucky because everybody was so accepting. Mm-hmm. I had such a beautiful experience in high school. Wow. And I met my friends, my best friend, who is still to this day, she's my friend, my closest confidant. And that journey itself was so inspiring. I had so many people supporting me. Mm-hmm. Of course, it was never easy, please. Right. Don't get me wrong, it's never easy, but just showing up with that spirit, everything is going to be fine. And everything was good. And then I went to college, and right after I graduated from UCLA, I had two choices: to go to either grad school or follow what my brother was doing, which was calling my soul.
Okay.
And I took that, and he was in media and entertainment at the time, and he was doing pretty well. So I started working with him, and then he was guiding me to start my own company. So I started very early. I started working on the conscious marketplace that I started building. It was a pilot marketplace that we were doing for the future. Wow. So we started off as that.
Okay.
And it was very similar to Amazon, but we were giving a percentage back to a charity when somebody buys something online.
Okay. That's wonderful.
And that happened, and then within that process, my brother and I co-founded We Are the Hope. It's a nonprofit, and what we do is create blueprints that we can test out what is working solutions, so other organizations can come and take it and replicate and spread it. So we have been doing that, and during the pandemic, that's when Power of Women came to be through We Are the Hope.
Wow, so that's wonderful that you and your brother collaborated on entrepreneurship in what you call edutainment, is where you have the entertainment factor to reel in audiences, but you also educate them on important factors like giving back to charities or people who are less fortunate, and to always remember that there is a purpose behind every type of group. So how supportive were your parents at that time for the both of you to collaborate and not to go into the traditional doctor, lawyer, engineer route? You know, graduating from UCLA, you know, every, I guess, brown parent would want their child to be like that bragging rights, you know?
You know, my parents are so incredible. My mom and dad, they're the biggest supporters.
That's wonderful.
They never told us you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. I mean, they always told us, study, do everything, but do what makes you happy, what your heart is calling you, because that's the only way you can be successful. So they never really pressured us. They just wanted to make sure we did well. That is a brown parent thing we cannot get away from.
Define well.
As long as you're happy and successfully, you know, doing everything, I think that was the number one priority. As long as we were happy and healthy and doing what we loved. So they were very, very supportive.
That's wonderful to hear that. And I see that's a common through line in a lot of the guests that I have on my show, where the parents, it took the sacrifice of a whole generation for them to finally let us have the privilege to be able to follow our dreams. Maybe it's because they weren't able to do so and they had to strive for just survival, you know, and they didn't have time, I feel like, to pass down those spiritual stories that maybe our grandparents did, or maybe that was the typical role where it comes to mythological tales or history or any type of, passing down ancestral stories, as is like the passage of right, that we get. And I think our parents understood that, and therefore we are more spiritually inclined and looking for answers and looking for the truth and how we can contribute through our privileges and, do it with passion. So now, tell me, what is the mission and objective of the Power of Women?
I'm going to tell you that with what you just shared. When we talk about history even, the word history itself is history when you actually read it.
Right.
There's so much that has been happening in the past 100 years alone. Women were not allowed to write books, go to college, like around the world. I mean, this was not in one specific place. Women really didn't have a say in a contribution in shaping the perspective or the history.
Yes.
So when you look at that, I mean, there's a lot of imbalancement, and women have been demanding for equality in the past 100 years. Women's suffrage, asking for all of these rights. We have come so far since then. I mean, Priyadarshini, you and I sitting here, this was not the case like 50 years ago. Us doing this,
Absolutely.
And this is, I mean, maybe not 50 years ago, maybe that's a little too close, but
I would say even 15 years ago. When was the last time you see someone from an Indian or Sri Lankan descent having a radio show and speaking on Hollywood Boulevard talking about our narrative as females, as people of brown descent, as immigrants, as all these other things that people kind of label us as our crutches, so to speak, in society? We turn that around, make that our strength. And we share what we're meant to share with our stories.
Absolutely. And when you ask about the mission of Power of Women is, let's change the narrative. Let's change the narrative from demanding equality to really embracing and stepping into our greatness. Because right now we are in a place, we have so much greatness in us as women, as females, that's so resilient, so much strength. We just have to change our mindset to when you demand what you don't have. But you step into what you have, what you are. And that's what the power of women is. And then also making sure we are not here to bash men or discuss about toxic masculinity.
Right.
The truth is, every king is born out of a woman. And in order for a woman to have a king, she needs a man.
Yes.
So it's a balance. We need each other. This is not just about women. This is not just about men. Women have the capability to be the ones to step into their greatness. They have so much love in them. They're like, listen, when I'm sitting in my power, I can see you. I recognize you. That's when we can create the space for men and women to feel the same way, step into their greatness. This is not about competition. This is not about battle of the sexes. This is real. I mean, we are experiencing the hottest days on earth right now.
Yeah.
There are so many natural disasters happening around. This is not a time for us to be like, oh, this is about men, women fighting for rights. This is about how can we come together in balance and work towards solutions, take a solution-driven approach. And we are, like you said, taking edutainment as our medium of mass communication, because whether we like it or not, music, media, and entertainment are the silent reinforcers of societal norms. Like, they tell you how the world is, how to see the world. It happens in such a subconscious way we don't realize. And that's why we're taking the route of edutainment. How can we create more wholesome content? Content that makes you reflect, recognize each other for the contributions we bring to the table, and be more solution-driven. I mean, we know things are not working out. Nothing is perfect. I mean, let's be real. But what can we do about it? So that is the mission of Power of Women. We are here.
I love it. Absolutely. Just a key couple of points that you mentioned, that this is not, women empowerment has nothing to do with male bashing. It has to do with empowering one another and advocating for each other, because we're absolutely in this together. Whether you look at any of the religious contexts, whether it is the Shiv is nothing without Shakti, whether you look at Adam and Eve, whether you look at any type of Norse or Greek mythology or any ancient type of culture, it's the yin and the yang that balance and create any type of environment, right? And now if the environment is suffering, it's going to take both of us to hone in together and uplift one another. And that means women understanding the male perspective, but males also not just sympathizing, but empathizing with the female perspective and working together at the end of the day. So now that we know how Power of Women is helping other people, what do you think is an essential aspect for women in terms of political awareness? Because like you mentioned, history has the words his story. And we'd like for the political narrative to also be more female inclusive, especially when it comes to politics of India and the South Asian countries. It's mostly male driven. When you go on and turn on any television show, it's the male's perspective, minus one or two pioneers who have given, half their life into journalism, and then you get to hear their perspective. So how can women kind of advocate for more political awareness and increase awareness for themselves?
I really feel like with what we are doing with Power of Women, the reason why we are doing it is to bring balance. There is a clear imbalancement of perspectives, like you mentioned. How can we balance it and have more perspectives incorporated? For example, there are two quotes we love to use by Einstein. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And the second one is you cannot solve a problem from the same mindset it was created from. So right now, it's very evident, like you said, there's a very masculine perspective that's happening, and there's so many things that's going on in the world. How are we going to solve it? We cannot solve from the same mindset, nor can we take the same approach. We have to do something different. And when you look at the leadership, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it too, but G20, that's happening this year, India is holding presidency. There are 20 leaders, 18 of them are male, 2 of them are female. And 2 women are representing half of the population and what needs to get done.
Right.
And there's a huge imbalancement. There are not enough perspectives to give different approaches, different solutions. So it's crucial at every level of leadership and decision-making process. It's more than just political awareness, it's about decision-making processes, women having that perspective to bring balance. So there are other ways we can look at the same problem or same situation. So that's very crucial, and that's what we are doing. How can we amplify the voices of women? And men are our pillars of support. We need men to actually support us. If men are at the leadership positions, we need to work with them to open up more
dialogue.
Like more dialogue, like you said, communication. We need to have open communication. We walk around like zombies. Even us women don't talk to each other for the most part, you know?
Right.
We need to be real. Like, what happened with the pandemic? Have you even processed it yet?
No.
That was a bomb dropped on all of us, and we're walking around as if we just didn't get hit by a pandemic that shut the world down for 2 years.
Right.
And these are things that we are not talking about even at a political space. That's something beautiful India is bringing to the table, even with yoga, breathing, because you have to take a step back and really connect with yourself. So I think political awareness, going back to that question, it's a matter of women, or rather that female perspective, and going further, the feminine perspective needs to be incorporated, because we have masculine and feminine energies within all of us. Whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. It's a matter of bringing that balance of the feminine perspective, the more compassion, the love, and then being more gentle when you're dealing with something. If you have a conflict with another country, if it's a bunch of mothers who have to make the decision, do you think they're going to want to go to war?
No.
A mother knows the value of giving life to, like, life.
Giving life,
Giving birthing life. They know the value. So they know what it takes to choose war versus, hey, what are the other options? The war becomes actually the last thing they wanna do. This is the way women bring their perspective, the feminine perspective. Same with news. If more feminine perspectives were running how news is presented, do you think we're gonna hear if it bleeds, it leads? It's gonna be more about what can we do, what can we take, what are the next steps we can take to get something done. So we need that feminine perspective in balance. Not saying that's the only perspective. We just need to bring balance with masculine and feminine. Same thing with political to leadership, everything.
I love that. Now, segueing into what you mentioned about politics and leadership, and you briefly kind of showcased what the G20 summit is, which is being held in New Delhi this year. So just to give our listeners a brief scope, the Group of 20, popularly known as the G20 summit, is happening in New Delhi, India in September 9th through the 10th. The Group of 20 comprises of 19 countries in alphabetical order: Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Republic of Korea, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, United Kingdom, and the United States, and the European Union. The G20 members represent around 85% of the global GDP, over 75% of the global trade, and about 2/3 of the world population. And speaking more about leadership and India's presidency this year for the G20, in his speech to Congress, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji mentioned that the theme this year is Vasudevaya Kutumbakam, meaning one earth, one family, one future. What are your thoughts on Indian heritage being prominent on a global platform?
Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Just those words, they're so beautiful. Only India could do this.
Absolutely.
Truly.
Very powerful. I think that
So
goes back
powerful.
to Sanskrit and the beauty that that ancient language holds still today, thousands of years later, regardless of how many other languages came about from it or other languages tried to erase it through library burnings or anything else that happened. Sanskrit survived. And I think that's the beauty that India also contributes today.
I'm getting goosebumps as you're saying this, because this is so beautiful. What India has been able to do this year is remarkable. I think this is going to be creating ripples for the
Universe.
Universe and for the next few years for all the other G20 countries when they're doing the G20 summit, because the way even Prime Minister Modi chose this theme, it's about oneness. It's not about India. It's about one earth, one family for one future. And this is so in alignment with Power of Women, which we started, last year on 02222022. For us, it's about what are we all looking for at the end of the day as individuals, like being very real, going internally. We all want peace of mind and well-being for ourselves, our loved ones, and have an environment that's doing well to live in. Because you can have all the money in the world, you can have all the fame in the world. If you don't have a place, all the rights in the world, please, if you don't have a place to live, a healthy planet to live, what are you going to do with all of that?
There's nowhere you can go. There's nowhere you can take all those things.
Yeah, so this theme, one earth, one family, one future, this is very real. And this is more relevant than it could have ever been. It's so timely. Yeah. And India doing this, I think this is the service India was always meant to do. This is taking a course that needs to take in order for us to transition into this new way of being, letting go of this whole ideology of being competitive with each other. To I have to get there before this person. No, let's see what do we have. Like, we really have to come together. We don't have a choice at this point, by the way. And it's our generation, Priyadarshini, that have stood up. I mean, personally, I am too young to be millennial, too old to be Gen Z. I am literally in the middle, a zillennial apparently, according to some researchers. We are the zillennials, and we are the ones who grew up with the internet, because we didn't learn about the internet. We didn't grow into the internet. Yeah. We grew up with it. So we have the experience of living in a regular world as well as growing up with the internet. We drove social media, Instagram to Snapchat to dating apps. We were at the forefront driving these. Yeah. Nobody told us how to navigate these. No. Nobody told us, hey, don't put your information out there on social media. Privacy,
we had to learn everything the hard way. We were the guinea pigs and the innovators at the same time, and rarely does that happen in the same generation.
And now we are in a place where, now AI is in the picture.
Yes.
Are we still going to stay quiet? Because we are the ones who are at the forefront of it. So this is what the power of women is. We are here and we're calling all the mothers, calling all the sisters, all the daughters. We are the daughters.
Yes.
And how can we really work towards one earth, one family, one future? When we step forward, I feel like everybody else, all the brothers, the dads, the friends, everybody comes together, because we have that love and that warmth. We emanate and warmth to bring them and show them, hey, it's time that we do something.
Right, and I particularly liked how Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji talked about India's contribution to society doesn't just start or stop with yoga, because we don't copyright it. And I thought that word was so interesting that he mentioned copywriting yoga, because I can go into any gym in any part of the world today and you'll see Kundalini and this and that and things that, to be frank with you, I don't really know that much about when it comes to yoga. And I wish, and I think there will come a time in my life that I would like to contribute and learn what that science is about. But not just yoga itself, but our Vedic texts that scientists in NASA are using when it comes to the Viman Puran, and realizing how ancient aircrafts were made, and finding scientific studies and funding those studies to see, hey, there's legitimacy in these ancient scriptures, or all the contributions that India has made to science when it comes to the old Pandits and the old Acharyas who invented the batteries, invented the plane, and the colonizers got credit for it centuries afterwards. So I feel like it's time, and it's the perfect time for India to take the presidency of the G20 and to advocate for, this is not just our knowledge, me. This is what we have given to the world, and we will continue to give, just like how India has given vaccinations to over 100 countries, and how we continue to give. And I think that power of giving and that uniqueness of the Indian perspective, having our traditions, but being welcoming to everyone from every caste, creed, country, religion, etc., and realizing that we're in this together, whether that is for climate change, environmental advocacy, women's empowerment, or any of the other topics that are so essential for today's narrative and perspective from both male and female sides. I think that's what the beauty of this year's G20 is with India's presidency. And now, could you give us more insight on how people here in the US, in Canada, any NRI, anybody from any different part of the world would like to be a part of the G20 virtually?
Please go to powerofwomen.info. That's POWEROFWOMEN.info and register for the conference. And I think everybody's voice is needed right now, and we have created a space where we actually in talks with C20, that's the official engagement group, to collaborate so we can have everybody's voices be heard, as well as submit white papers to the G20, so there can be actual policies, policy work that can come out of it. So registering, and then we have polling, we have certain sessions where people can actually engage as a part of the audience with the speakers, share their opinion, which is gonna be very valid, it's valuable, it's considered. Be a part of it, follow us on Instagram, the same handle as website, powerofwomen.info, Twitter. We are always posting, and support us, join us. It's a movement for all of us women. We are there for each other, and we don't have to walk around as if we are by ourselves. We are here for each other.
Right.
Let's have really open conversations. Let's be reflective. And I want to add something. You said yoga. I discovered Raja Yoga through the Brahma Kumaris last year.
Okay.
And it's a yoga for the mind. You don't have to do anything physical. So these are the gifts we want to share with the world, and I know we have a lot to give and a lot to learn from each other. This is what we are creating, a safe space for everybody to come together in collaboration, in love. Be a part of the movement. This is our movement. It's real life.
I love that, Shenali. Thank you so much for gracing us with your warmth, your synergy, and all that you do with the Power of Women and We Are the Hope. And I wish you and your brother so much success as I continue on seeing your journey and being a part of it in the future as well with the Power of Women. Rukus Ave radio listeners, this is your correspondent, Priyadarshini G. Roy, signing off with Shenali Rajaratnam. And we look forward to seeing everything that she has to offer with the Power of Women. And if you'd like more information on how you can be a part of the G20 Summit virtually, please check out all the socials in the description box below and follow Power of Women on Instagram and all of her other social media.
Thank you, Priyadarshini. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, Rukus Avenue radio listeners, Priyadarshini G. Roy, your radio correspondent, signing off until next time.
Rukus Avenue Radio.